Hello smiley faces, welcome to another edition of I Say Numbers and You Believe Me, also known as Spot Review. For today I figured I would pick up one of the most cancer grinding spots in the game, which is Gahaz Bandits, and butcher it like the previous ones and figure out what it has to offer in terms of experience, skill experience and money per hour values. I'm pretty sure sooner or later everyone found himself grinding here, so it's about time to see how the spot stacks up and if it is as good as people make it out to be, and if it has a reason to be this contested. Before we get started, I should mention this entire test was made from my ranger's perspective and not my wizard like the previous ones, mainly because my wizard got to level 62 and now I don't want to grind on him anymore. So here are my ranger's stats. Finally I get to use a different clip that I didn't record a month ago to show my stats, my pets, gear and so on. My bow has 2 extraction gems, which most rangers probably don't have, but since I rarely PvP, I figured I would use 2 extraction gems because it does allow me to grind faster, since I don't need to carry any potions or to use potions whatsoever. I can finally say that my node level is 10 because I invested in the bandits node a long time ago and I never sold it, so node level is 10, mob knowledge is S, it has been S for a very long time. And now I guess the last point to talk about is the rotation. This area has 3 rotations and I kind of grinded all of them for this test, mainly because the test, as you will see soon, is split in the first half when I grinded elites and the second one when I only grinded monsters. So for the elites part we have the main rotation and the, as I used to call it, crossroads rotations. And then if you only want to grind monsters, arguably the best rotation here is the cliffside rotation. Now it's going to take a while to show all of them, and here is a timestamp if you just want to skip ahead, but I'm just going to try to fill the time, and if I can't I will just put background music while all of the rotations are playing. So first we start with the crossroad rotation, because this one has 3 elites. This is arguably the worst rotation here. I would only suggest it if you are maybe level 58, 59, you have a slow class, maybe you don't know how to grind on it, you are not optimized yet, because it doesn't have enough monsters to support someone who has decent gear grinding here. Most importantly for my wizard or my ranger, it doesn't have enough monsters unless you know how to extend it, but I never grinded the extended version. Then we have the main rotation. This one, I don't know why I say it's the main rotation, because in my opinion the main one is the cliffside one, since that's what probably most people grind as, main rotation. But still, this one has 6 elites. It's basically the main rotation for elites, I suppose. Anyway, for my ranger, if I go all out and with my current gear, this one still doesn't have enough monsters. It just barely makes it, I guess. Basically, if I go all out on my ranger in the main rotation where all 6 elites are, the monsters don't respawn in time when I'm back to the start of it. This is at this point a problem probably just with my class. I'm pretty sure someone, maybe a Valkyrie, Ninja, let's say Kunos, Valks, I already said Valks, witches, wizards, they probably don't have any issues. This is just for those specific classes who are, let's say, optimized to grind one-shottable monsters. For example, rangers who grind very quickly one-shottable monsters. I found this out while I was testing elites, that I can't do the main rotation and have enough monsters, so for the sake of the experience tests, I've only done those on the cliffside rotation. So I don't know if the main rotation is done playing by now. Most people already know how it looks like. Basically, if you come here just to grind elites, you will have to switch between the main rotation and the crossroads one to hunt all 9 of them and then switch channels over and over. This is pretty much what I have done for the elites part of the video. Then for the second part of the video, I switched to the cliffside rotation just to hunt monsters over and over. I kind of had to extend it quite a lot because, as I used to know at least, the cliffside rotation, he didn't have enough monsters. In fact, I'm pretty much certain that I overlapped with a different rotation, at least one more of them, because on the top of the cliff I am including part of that. You will see it on the screen when the time comes, but basically I hear that there is another rotation that you can make just on the top of the cliff, which I never grinded before, but I am using part of that on the cliff side rotation, as I call it. Then I use the circle that is down towards the crossroads one, and lastly the monsters that are on the villa side. So I need to include all of these in order to, give my ranger enough monsters to kill and have them respawn in time for the next cycle of the rotation. And this is again an issue probably just with my ranger. I'm certain that my wizard doesn't grind as fast, but it is worth mentioning. Now, I'm not trying to say that I'm one of the fastest grinders or whatever, I'm just stating that as I currently grind with my ranger, which may or may not be the best way, it seems to be faster than what my wizard can do. So if we compare this video to the previous ones, I'm pretty sure the experience values will be slightly higher than they should be. But we can talk about that when we get into the experience side. So by now I hope all of the rotations are done playing. You should have a fairly good understanding of what we are talking about here. And now let's get into the actual data. For the story that I tell every single video about what happened during the 10 hours, this time I can say that not a whole lot happened that you didn't already expect. So for the first part, basically I combined all of the elite grinding sessions. We have 3 hours and 15 minutes spent mainly switching servers over and over and trying to hunt as many elites as I could. If the elites were dead, I would switch to only hunting monsters, filling the dead time. This is pretty much what I did for 3 hours and 15 minutes. Then we have the second part, which is about 5 hours and 31 minutes grinded on my ranger on this extended cliffside rotation. And lastly, I have 1 hour and 7 minutes grinded on my Valkyrie, also on this same cliffside rotation. For this one, I guess I could mention that I did encounter some people. There were some dual instances, PvP. This is pretty much what you can expect at this point from bandits. It is a very contested area. There were times when I intentionally didn't test it. I would switch servers and someone would be poking around the cliffside rotation, or some people were already grinding it and I didn't feel like going to the duel, or I lost the duel. So there were times when I intentionally AFK'd on the spot, maybe half an hour, just to be able to test it without being interrupted. So yeah, it is a contested spot. I guess it's also worth mentioning that when I was testing elites, I kind of had to go to the city quite often, maybe after every 3 servers, to sell my weapons, because you get a lot of those from the elites and they take inventory space really quickly. Throughout this entire test, I was selling to the NPC all of the base level weapons. I'm pretty sure most of you don't keep them to sell them with a value pack unless you run one 24/7 and you feel like registering that many base weapons to the market. So I just sold them to the NPC. The enhanced ones, I would extract the blackstones out of them. And I guess the last thing to mention will be that during the cliffside rotation testing part, I also had to go to the Shakatu city after every 1 hour or 1.5 hours for the exact same reason, as it was kind of unexpected to me. You still get a lot of base weapon drops. Basically, I didn't expect that testing the cliffside rotation without any elites, I would still get this many base weapons and my inventory to fill this quickly. So even grinding the cliffside rotation, you still have to go to the city pretty often to drop the or to sell the weapons, unless you have a lot of inventory space. So that's that for my story. Now we can talk about the experience and skill experience part. For these, I only tested experience during the cliff rotation part of the testing, because obviously when you hunt elites, you grind slower, you grind inconsistent depending on how many elites are alive, how much time you take per each elite. So for the sake of consistency, I didn't feel like taking any values out of those 3 hours, and the only experience I'm going to talk about is from the cliffside rotation, when I had uninterrupted sessions, basically without PvP or whatever, and with consistent experience buffs. So we have 3 runs that I took the values out of, making an average out of them. The experience from the monsters is about 0.109% experience per hour at the base 100%. For the skill experience, if you saw my previous video, you know that I said Tshira Ruins is pretty much identical to Bandits, and I still stand by what I said, even though the average here is around 1 skill point level up and 77% experience, skill experience per hour. It does seem higher, but in the same time I can say for sure that my ranger grinds faster than my wizard, and if I were to bring my wizard here, it would be somewhat slower and the values would be slightly lower. So yes, this seems like it is better than Tshira Ruins, but in reality it probably is just simply my class. For the monster skill per hour and trash per hour values, which are very important, I only looked at these 3 runs, again, that had stable, the buffs that don't really matter, but basically when I wasn't interrupted by anyone, and the values seem to be pretty consistent. So we have somewhere around 5.7 thousand trash per hour, that is what my pets can loot, and monster skill per hour somewhere around 5.6 thousand on average. Here is something that you might find interesting. So say if you want to compare your class to mine or your character to mine and see if you grind slower or faster than me and scale the experience and skill experience values accordingly, basically my ranger kills at 5.6 thousand monsters per hour. That's the rate I managed to get. Whether that's efficient or not, that's besides the point. The trash per hour value is irrelevant because that only shows what my pets can loot, not how fast I clear, and to prove that I have my Valk run, which I want to point out, it's very important. On that 1 hour where I grinded on Valk, I had Marnie stones and I had an inventory, so with that I can pretty much say that my Valk killed about 4.5 thousand monsters per hour, which is obviously less than what my ranger can do, but in return it still got 5.5 thousand trash per hour average, which is almost identical to what my ranger can get. So at the end of the day, the monster's value matters more than the trash one, because there's only so much my pets can loot. And my Valk isn't even that good, I'm pretty much a pleb, I barely know how to grind on it, so I'm pretty sure that's inefficient in terms of the Valk side. It can probably get more monsters per hour, but basically the point that I'm trying to make is that you should always look at the monsters per hour value that I show and use that one to scale up or down the experience values to match your own character. So next up we have the Marnie stones, which since I kill a lot of monsters per hour, obviously I fill them really quickly. I still think the statement that the 250 stones give more experience than the 500 ones is true, so you should buy the 250 stones if you want as much experience as possible. Using those, again, seeing how much experience I get per each stone. I had one run where I turned in 19 of them. The result was, using the average monster skill per hour, that I would make about 0.507% experience per hour just from Marnie stones, which is, it seems like it's higher than what I got at Tshira Ruins, but in the same time I think it's just because my ranger grinds faster than my wizard. Anyway, the same comparison that I pretty much made a default on the previous video. What happens if I have 350% experience rate using buffs? I'm just going to keep on using Mirumok ruins as a comparison. Again, this area beats it. Basically, if Tshira ruins beats Mirumok ruins and this place is actually better than Tshira ruins, then I suppose there's no argument to be made. Gahaz Bandits has a pretty good experience rate. Anyway, what this was supposed to show is that if you do get a lot of buffs, the experience still scales pretty well, even though most of the experience comes from Marni stones. Anyway, let's move on into the money per hour value before I get too casual and forget that this video is supposed to be as brief as possible. So for money per hour, we have two different values. Basically, there's the elite one and the cliffside rotation one. For the elite value, basically I kept track of everything that I got on those 3 hours and 15 minutes where I was mainly trying to kill elites. Basically, what you can take out of this method is that you get a lot of blackstones, more than you would get grinding normally, and the average money per hour was about 41.8 millions per hour, which is pretty high in my opinion. I don't think I had a very unrealistic luck with the enhanced weapon drops. I didn't get a single setup drop during the entire test, so it could be even better. Crystals, I only got one crystal on these 3 hours killing elites, so it seems pretty good in my opinion and pretty realistic, 41 millions per hour. For the other value, we have the 6 hours and a half or so spent on the cliffside rotation. I basically combined the Valkran and the Ranger one, mainly because there was no difference in the trash per hour in between the two characters, so it's not important. Anyway, as you expected, you get less blackstones not killing elites. I still get quite a few enhanced weapon drops. Again, not really a lot of them. I got 6 Iona fragments in 6.5 hours or so you can probably say 1 Iona fragment per hour. The average was 33.3 millions per hour, lower than the one from elites. It kind of makes sense because elites drop a lot of blackstones and they have a much higher drop rate for enhanced weapons, but still, if you want to go all out and get as much experience as possible and probably more scrolls, I'm not sure on that front, but if you don't want to grind elites and you pick the cliffside rotation, you should be making around 30 millions per hour, let's say. Oh yeah, by the way, like the previous videos, I considered that you would be selling everything to the marketplace with a value pack, but you already know that, or you should know that. Moving on, the last point on the video is ranking. This one, you can see it on the screen already. All I'm going to say is that the experience seems to be just a little bit better than Tshira ruins. That's why I gave them S- instead of A+. It's probably just because the Rangers are a class that is optimized or is much better at killing one-shottable monsters than Wizard, so if I do bring my Wizard here, it would probably have somewhat lower experience values, closer to what you get at Tshira ruins. Still, it seems to be higher, so S-. For money per hour, I also gave it an S- because it seems pretty good. 30 to 40 millions per hour is pretty good actually. It doesn't rely on RNG very much because I got no setup drops. The scroll drops here are normally pretty high, so I wouldn't consider those good or bad RNG. I only got 4 crystals in total on the 10 hours, so that seems pretty average. Basically what I'm trying to say is that my luck seems to be pretty decent, and so 30 to 40 millions per hour deserves a pretty good ranking. It's not the best in the game, but it seems to be good enough for a spot that doesn't require a lot of gear to grind. This is why it's so contested. And talking about convenience, actually, I would just go for a B, I don't know, average, slightly below average spot, just because the weapons don't really break very quickly. You are pretty close to a city, those are good points. It has Marni stones, another good point, but this is where the bad points come. Marnie stones take inventory space. If you want the good ones, the 250 ones, you need to use a lot of Marnie stones. Basically you need to fill at least 2 or 3 or 4 rows of your inventory with Marnies just to grind 1 or 2 hours. Then on top of that you get a lot of weapon drops, so if you don't have inventory space you will make a lot of trips to Shakatu. In my case, with what I have on my ranger, which has a decent inventory space in my opinion, I still need to visit Shakatu every hour. And on top of that, the worst part, there's only one rotation that is good enough to sustain my ranger at full speed, the cliffside rotation, and it is very contested. You will often see duels or people PKing you out of the spot, or you may switch channels over and over and the rotation would still be taken. Basically there are negative aspects and it makes sense. The spot is very good in everything except convenience. So these are my opinions. Let me know in the comments what you think, how fast you can grind. Basically what I'm trying to get at is that if you are interested in sharing your data, I know a lot of people grind bandits, just simply try to get Marnie stones in your inventory, keep track of how many monsters you kill per hour, let me know. It would show me, you know, if I grind fast, if my trash per hour is faster than what most people get on average or lower. In any case, this was my experience with the spot. I'm glad I decided to revisit it. Now that the video is done, I will probably not return at bandits for a very long time. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you want to see. You will most likely see more of this type of content, but it still makes me happy. Subscribe if you want to see more, but you will most likely see more even if you don't subscribe. I will see you in a different video. Stay happy, keep playing Black Desert. I don't know how long the video is, but who cares. And yeah, bye bye.